Well, welcome back to the live this week. Now, this week we're talking about a topic that I think is going to be very helpful to, I think, a lot of law firms because one of the conversations that I've been having with a lot of law firms is, when it comes down to cash flow. And before we jump into it, I'll explain kind of why this is an even more important topic because, one of the things that's going on in the, I guess you say, the grander economy is that as inflation is heated up and there are all these talks about interest rates, there's these talks about just, people are assessing their budgets and people are looking at different things going on. Plus with recent legislation that's been signed of tax rates on different organizations or different businesses. And I say all that not to say that, hey, this is a direct reason, but when things like that happen, people tend to take a second look at how they're spending their money. They tend to take a second look at some of the approaches that they're taking. And one of the things that a lot of business owners don't do, or sometimes unfortunately business owners do too late, is to start thinking about, hey, what does this mean for my business? Like, how can this possibly impact my business, or how can this possibly impact my law firm? And so when you wait too late to think about it, sometimes it may be sometimes it creates a cash flow issue in your business. Now, outside of that, there are some normal things that we are seeing with a lot of law firms where there are things that they can probably tweak, things that they can change, which will improve their cash performance and which will lower some of the issues that they're seeing when it comes down to their cash flow. So today we're going to talk about that, like some of the reasons why law firms are having problems. And then we're also going to talk about some of the solutions that they can implement. Now, before we do that, for those of you that aren't familiar with who I am, my name is Terrell Turner. I am the founder of the TL Turner Group. We create a lot of podcasts to really help, to help business owners and entrepreneurs across so many different spectrums. The Law and Finance Show is one that we are very excited about. Also, the Stuff Your Bookkeeper Isn't Telling You. Now, on the Law and Finance Show, a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm sitting down with a lawyer or a law firm related business, and we're having conversations about what are some of the things that they learned or had to figure out how to do when it comes down to managing the business side of their law firm. Now, in the Stuff Your Bookkeeper Isn't Telling You, my wife, who is also a CPA and has a finance background, we're talking about those topics in accounting and finance that, from talking to so many different business owners, we have interviewed over 460 business owners in the past year or at past 2 years. And we have heard some very common things that they have said are issues. And in our mind, we're like, your bookkeeper should be helping you figure that out. But what we realize is that a lot of times the bookkeepers aren't helping the business owners or the entrepreneurs figure that type of stuff out. So we started a show to focus on really, helping clear up some of those things. And so you can definitely check out all of our shows on the Business Talk Library. We also post highlights on LinkedIn, Instagram. We post videos on YouTube. You can check out the podcast. Like I said, you can go to our website. If you're a law firm, I would say go to the tlturnergroup.com. So tlturnergroup.com. You'll see a lot of the free videos, the conversations, the interviews, a lot of great resources there to help you on that aspect of it. But back to the topic of today, where we're talking about, why law firms have cash flow issues. So now, to really understand, cash flow, I think you got to take a step back and we need to really look at, okay, what are kind of the normal flow of cash? I mean, when it comes down to a law firm. So this is probably a good depiction of, generally for a law firm, here is how money moves in and out of your law firm, because cash flow is exactly what the name implies. It is how money flows in and out of or you can say how money flows in, through, and out of your business. Now, one of the things about cash flow when it comes down to law firms is there's a unique aspect. If you're a firm that has trust accounting involved, and that may not be for all law firms, but for many law firms, if you have trust accounting involved, I mean, you're gonna, settle cases and you're gonna get payments from clients. That's going to sit in your trust account. And based on what happens there are some fees that you pay off of that, or there are some expenses you pay on behalf of the client, or some disbursements you do. And then you also have your attorney's fees. Now, I want to spend the rest of the time on the operating accounts because, the trust accounting is probably a whole nother conversation. We can get it. We will get into that in a later video. But today I want to talk about the cash flow as it pertains to how you operate your business. So the first thing is really thinking about, like, where does cash come from? Like, how does cash get in your business? So we're starting on the left. I mean, these are some of the common places that cash comes into your business. Now, I would say 3 through 5 are ones that aren't probably happening on a regular basis. Like, those are probably, hopefully those aren't things that you need to do on a consistent, constant basis. Hopefully 1 and 2 are enough cash coming into your business from actions 1 and 2. And then once the cash comes in your business, then as a business owner, there's a ton of different expenses that you have to cover, from compensation and staffing. And I would highly advise, if you're running a law firm, is that, hey, how do we make sure that you, as the owner of the law firm, are also compensated as well? Because there are a lot of lawyers that I've met that are not compensating themselves, and they're paying everybody else. And when they get to the end of the year, there's not much left over for them. So I would say, if you aren't paying yourself or compensating yourself for the work you're doing in your law firm, I would say that it is probably a great idea to come up with a plan to getting you to that point. And I get it, because when I started my accounting firm, I wasn't taking compensation immediately because we just couldn't afford to do it. So part of it is figuring out a game plan of how do you get to that point. And then also, many people I've talked to about, like, profit first. There are some ideas and some thoughts there that I think a lot of people are implementing, and a lot of people are finding a lot of benefits with, which can be an option. But then you have, like, all your other things. Now, one of the things that I will note is that if you notice, the list of things that cash goes out to tends to be a little bit longer than the list of things that bring cash in. So this is why this becomes, I guess, from just even the visual, an obvious reason why many firms run into problems, because there's so many different things that they have to pay for. And if the amount of money you have coming in isn't enough to cover all of these things, you're going to run into cash flow issues. And that is kind of what you want to avoid. So now I want to take a look at a couple of things. We're going to take a look at, these are common reasons, and I'm not going to read all of this. I would say, I mean, because it's on the screen. You guys can take a screenshot. You can come back and rewatch the video. But here are common reasons why, why firms have cash problems. Now, what you'll notice is, and I broke this down in a way between firms that do hourly billing or firms that do fixed pricing. Now, because some of the things are a little bit different depending on how you actually bill your customers. So, but there are some aspects of it that are pretty similar. For example, like, the first two are, I have found to be very consistent for hourly companies or firms that bill hourly, and firms that bill based on fixed pricing. And the first one is just a lack of consistent billing. Like, there have been a number of law firms that I have talked to, that when I ask them, hey, what's your process for billing the customers? And they may say, oh, well, we haven't gotten billing out for like 3 weeks, or we haven't gotten billing out for like 2 months. And one of the first things that I say is that, if you're thinking about it, is, in order for you to operate your business, you need cash coming in. So if you're not billing your customers, or you're not sending the invoice to ask your customer to pay you for the work that you have done, then you are limiting your firm from being able to actually receive the cash. So one of the things that I tell people is that a common area is that they just, if they do have a billing process, they don't have a consistent one. Another one is on AR collections, is having a process for following up with people who haven't paid their invoice. I mean, a lot of law firms that I meet is they may do a decent job on getting the bill out and asking and telling the client, hey, here's your invoice, but they don't always have a process for, okay, how do you follow up on that? Like, how do you get those, how do you send them notices or send them reminders to make sure that that gets done? Now, after that, what you'll start to see is we start to get in some unique aspects between an hourly billing and fixed price billing. And here's where we get into some of the operational steps or some of the operational factors, to where if you're billing hourly, one of the big challenges I've seen with a lot of law firms that bill hourly is the billable rates that they're using just aren't wise for their business. And so one of a couple of reasons why I've seen people do that is, one is they didn't know what to charge and they were afraid that, hey, clients would be upset if they charged too high of a rate, or they just looked at the rate of another company and said, hey, we're a similar firm. I talked to some friends, they charge this, and they just started charging it. But no one actually really looked into it. Similar thing happens on the fixed pricing side, where they just don't have a price that makes sense for their business. Other things that I think really come into play is that people in an hourly billing often have a low employee ROI. Now, employee ROI, what that means is a return on investment. And a lot of times that comes from whether it's hiring practices or whether it comes from just not giving your staff the right targets for them to hit and not setting the right expectations when you are hiring staff members. And then also, I think your caseload becomes a very important thing, and your caseload problem. So what that simply means is you don't have enough cases flowing through your pipeline to actually meet the needs of, or the financial needs or the cash flow needs to support your business where it is. Now, the truth of the matter is, if you don't have enough cases flowing through the pipeline, at some point you are going to have to make some uncomfortable decisions. Now, some of those times, those decisions start off with you as an owner don't take a compensation, or you have to go get financing or go get a line of credit. And I will tell you, a lot of times if you're looking for short-term financing to support your business, the interest rates can be very high. So you want to make sure that, hey, you know what, you're doing the things you can to help improve the cash flow of your business so you don't run into these issues. Now, when it comes down to solving these, some of the answers are the same. Like I said, there are some unique differences between the two. But I want to go take it step by step on the, so let's say if you are doing fixed billing for for your firm is doing fixed billing. What I listed here is, here are the problems on the left. Here are some of the solutions. Now, here's the thing that I advise you, that I think how you're going to get the most use out of, this video, this live, this Facebook group, is what I think you should do is, if you are a firm that uses fixed billing, what you should do is take a screenshot of this page. You can do it on your cell phone or depending on how you're looking at it, but take a screenshot of this. And what you can do is, in the next meeting that you have with your bookkeeper or your accountant, tell them, hey, I would like to talk about these issues and to see, hey, are any of these problems causing me to have cash flow problems? If they are, you already have a cheat sheet to be able to use to have a discussion about, like, all right, if these problems do exist in my firm, what are we going to do about it? And you can take a screenshot of this, because one of the things that I always say is that sometimes lawyers don't understand that the accountant that you hire actually works, and their job should be to support your firm. They should be to support you to getting closer to the goals that you are trying to achieve. And sometimes some lawyers or law firms, they just don't have any questions that they ask their accountant or that they ask their bookkeeper. And I've told plenty of firms like, hey, even if you don't work with us, at least take a screenshot of this and have this discussion with your accountant, with your bookkeeper, or with your CFO, and ask them questions that say, hey, how are we doing in these areas? Like, how can we get better as a firm in these areas? Now, there's a couple of things in here that I think are very good to point out. Like when it comes down to, lack of consistency or in billing or AR problems, that is a systems and process or procedure problem. Now, one of the things I really love, like referencing, like my friend Kristen David over at Uplevel Your Business has done a great job of drilling that in my head about, what, these first two are simply a system and a procedure problem. Is you should be able to work with your bookkeeper, or if you're working with a business coach or a coach for your law firm, is ask for help in this area. Like, hey, we need some systems and procedures about, consistent billing and AR collection processes. Now, the next one I think is on when it comes down to low staff efficiency. What this literally means is that your staff is not efficiently doing the work you actually get paid for. What a lot of firms run into is that you may have employees who are on salary, and the problem is that you're going to have to pay them whether they deliver work that the firm gets paid for or not. So when it comes down to firm, I guess you say fixed pricing for firms, productivity or efficiency is going to be an important metric you should really look at. And what I tell a lot of firms is you need something that will help you monitor the productivity of how your team is performing and what your team is doing. Because if you don't have anything to really judge the productivity, you really won't know how much money are you making on that type of case, or how much money are you making on this type of case. See, understanding the productivity will help you understand that. And then also, I think what understanding productivity does, it also helps you understand, hey, your profit margins by case type. And that will help you understand, are my prices in the right place? Because when you come up with a fixed price strategy, or a firm fixed price or a flat rate, however you want to call it, when you come up with that type of pricing, one of the things that you should be asking yourself is, how much profit am I actually making when I do this work? Well, if you don't analyze the gross margin or the productivity, you won't know, because there have been plenty of firms that I've come to and I've talked to, and they said, I've asked them, hey, what are you doing on your price? And they was like, oh, our pricing is fine. We charge $20,000 to handle this type of case. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good, but how much profit is in that 20,000? And they had no way to tell me. And I said, okay, all right, I understand that sound $20,000 to, support a case may sound very high, but let's actually look at the numbers and let's see. And when we started digging into the numbers, what we started realizing is they weren't making as much profit as they thought they were. And part of that is because they had hired new associate attorneys. Their overhead for their business had changed. So the dynamics of their business had really changed, and they had never updated their pricing. And plus, they were also doing a lot of extra work for the client that they didn't actually plan for. So when we looked at it, we realized like that 20,000 needs to increase if you're going to be doing that type of work, or if you're going to be adding this type of work to that caseload. So that's why it becomes very, very important to look at that. Now, one of the other things, or two things I'll mention else on this, is the first one is going to be on the employee ROI calculator. I will say is, if you're looking for a really good employee ROI calculator, you should definitely reach out to the team over at Kristen David at Upleveling Your Business. They have a really good employee ROI calculator. And I guess, I may sound biased because I helped create it, but it's something that we've tested with many law firms and many organizations. And what I will tell you is after 3 minutes of them going through that employee ROI calculator, one of the things that a lot of them consistently say is, oh my gosh, this makes sense now. Like I understand where the problem is, because what you need is some type of simple tool that helps you figure things out that may not always be as obvious, but that's one tool that really helps. The last one I want to talk about is a case value analytics, because this is something that I am seeing more and more of when it comes down to people who are using firm or fixed pricing in their model. Is that when you're using fixed pricing, a lot of times you're going to have a mixture of, there's some cases that you make a lot of profit on or that have higher prices. And then there are some cases that are smaller, they're lower in dollar amount, they're relevant to the type of law you practice, but they just don't make that much money. Well, when looking at a lot of businesses, and they were telling me, they were saying like, hey, my employees are overworked. They're working a lot. We just can't get through the work, but we're still having cash flow problems. And I said, what's probably the case is you're probably spending way too much time working on cases that have very little value. And the reason why I know that is because I was doing the same thing when I was looking at my own accounting firm, to where I was saying like, hey, we seem to be out of time. The team is working constantly. I'm working all kind of late hours of the night. And when I looked at it and I said, okay, let me take a step back and do this for my own business, and said, okay, all right, what do the actual client values look like? And when I looked at it, I said, oh my gosh, we're spending 75% of our time on our smallest customer accounts. When I realized that, I said, that's why we're working so much. And that's why cash is tight. And so what we started to do is to develop a strategy on, one is, how can we automate some of the things that some of those clients needed? Because we still wanted to deliver the value. So we automated some of the things that they needed. And then in the future, what we started doing is we changed our marketing strategy to start targeting more higher value work, because we had to balance out that dynamic. And going forward, what we started to do is say, hey, we can only survive as long as at a minimum 50% of our work comes from the higher value cases. Because if we start doing, that number changes below that, we're going to run into cash flow issues. So one of the things that you can definitely do in your business is to work with your bookkeeper or if your bookkeeper is really good, they might know this, but this might actually be a CFO type question, is start to analyze your case values and ask that important question of, hey, what does our mix need to look like? And, I did this with another firm that wanted to do more pro bono work or work with the government, because they really like that type of law. They really like those type of cases. So what we did is we came up with a strategy and said, based on the cash flow, you can accept 5 of those a month. You can't afford to do more than 5 a month, because every time you go over 5, your business starts to go in a negative cash flow position. And so what they started doing is looking at and realizing like, hey, I can still serve the population that I want to serve, but I have to put some boundaries around it so that I don't hurt the business as a whole. So as I said, I think that these are some great topics for you to continue with the person who is specifically working with your business and understands your numbers. So if you are using firm fixed pricing, take a screenshot of this one. If you are using hourly rate pricing, take a screenshot of this. And here's what you do. You text your bookkeeper or your accountant, or you send them a message and just say, hey, in our next meeting, I would like to talk about these topics because I want to know, do we have potential cash flow problems in these areas? And if you do, okay, what is our game plan to fix this? Because you don't want to run into a situation where you have a cash flow problem and it's too late for you to actually do something about it. So now I will say, if you don't have a bookkeeper or a CFO that you're working with, and you would like to reach out to us and work with, and you like us to work with your firm, you can definitely, send me a message, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on LinkedIn, or you can go to our website, the tlturnergroup.com, and there you can find us. And like I said, we have free resources, and we're continuing this conversation in the community, because what we realize is that sometimes what you need is just a little bit of advice or a tip to help you get over a hurdle. And then other times what you need is you need a expert or someone who has experience that can come in and help walk you through how to fix it. And then there are other times where you say, hey, I just need a company to come in and just fix it for me. And we help on all of those areas. So thanks for tuning in, and look out for next week when we come back with the next topic on our live. If you're looking for ideas on how to manage and grow a profitable law firm, this Facebook group is perfect for you, because every week we are featuring conversations with successful lawyers and businesses related to law firms on tips, ideas, and technology that are helping many people grow and manage a profitable law firm. So if you're looking for great tips and ideas, you definitely want to click the link below so you can join the conversation and be part of the Law Firms and Finance Facebook group.